All right, everybody. This video is going to be about the forum post that's due on Friday, May 20, this Friday by 5 p.m., and the chapter that forum post is based on, which is the introductory chapter from Leith's book. So it's just a 15-page chapter, but it's a good step into the direction of what rhetoric is. And so this video is just to help give you a little bit more grounding in what you're expected to have done by 5 p.m. on Friday. So let's go ahead to the first of the 6 sections of our summer session, chapter introduction, pages 1 to 15. And when you click on that and scroll down, the video lecture about Leith's introduction is the one that I'm doing right now. So clearly that's going to get updated TBA. It'll be completed. And there is a link to Leith's introductory chapter as a PDF. I'm probably going to be PDFing all these chapters as I go, so I can use them in my videos. I think I mentioned that in the welcome video. So forum post number 1, due by Friday evening. Let's take a look here. Here's the prompt. Where do you see rhetoric in your life today? And hint, it's everywhere. And when you think about where you see rhetoric in your life today, please think broadly, meaning well beyond print. Think about any and all moments of persuasive communication in your life, from social media to formal in-person events to informal moments with family and or friends. Think about radio or cable or podcasts or websites. Think broadly. Where do you see rhetoric in your life today? Describe a recent example of rhetorical communication that you found compelling or persuasive. And with Leith's chapter in mind, ask yourself, why did it work? Why or how was it able to move you in some way? I mean, did it get you to kind of stop for a second and think about things in a slightly new or nuanced way? Did it get you to feel something a little bit different from the moment before? Did it get you to act or stop acting? So that's the forum post, just a first kind of, initial step into 6 weeks focused on rhetoric, with this question. So I will tell you, with this kind of forum post here, I've got a series of questions here. Use the questions as your roadmap, so just answer the questions. That's what I would do. If you expand on, it's not like you have to only write one sentence for each of these sentences. In fact, you're going to want to write a little bit more than that. But please use the questions as a basic outline for your response, so I can see that you're working directly with the prompt. So again, this forum post is based on the introductory chapter, so let's take a look at it. Leith devotes a good part of the chapter to just explaining or offering a definition for what rhetoric is. So what is rhetoric? He says on page 1. He says rhetoric is, simply defined as possible, the art of persuasion. The attempt by one human being to influence another in words, and those words can be spoken or they can be written. He then says on page 2, rhetoric is a field of knowledge. That is something susceptible to analysis and understanding in the same way poetry is. So yeah, it's an academic field. It is that too. But this is more the focus of our summer session. Rhetoric as an art of persuasion and understanding how it's possible to use language in a persuasive way. How did the classical tradition teach politicians, lawyers, and other professionals how to move an audience toward a new way of thinking based on the goals they had in mind? So it's a practical art, it's an academic field, and then Leith puts in, rhetoric is hustling, and it is that too. I mean, there's plenty of rhetoric that goes on in everyday interactions, haggling for a better price, in a store, haggling with friends about what you're going to do on a Friday night, talking through the price when you go in to buy a car or furniture. I mean, I guess I'm giving some of the same examples over again, but any time that, there are just everyday spontaneous moments of rhetoric that show up too. They don't have to be well designed and sophisticated. They don't have to just be about theory and related to an academic field. They can also just be everyday moments of suasion that you participate in, and you probably do this. I'm sure you do. We all do. Numerous times a week. We just don't think of it as having a tradition behind it. In this chapter, Leith then goes on to give 3 contexts in which he's trying to explain how a sentence can have a rhetorical goal or end related to it based on the context. So the same sentence can mean something really different based on the context. I'll let you go ahead and read through that. I don't think it's anything too complicated, but what he mentions here in passing is that he's kind of talking about the divisions, the 3 modes of oratory known as epideictic, forensic, and deliberative. I won't go into this right now. He doesn't go into it, and you don't need it for a forum post. So getting back to his definitions of rhetoric, rhetoric is language at play, language plus. It is what persuades and cajoles, inspires and bamboozles, thrills and misdirects. To think about rhetoric is to think about something central to the foundation of our politics, to the DNA of our culture, and to the basic workings of the human mind. I mean, persuasive communication is a universal aspect of human communication across regions globally. It's done differently across different continents, across different cultures, different histories. But understanding that when you use language to try and move another person or an audience toward new ways of thinking and feeling or acting, then you are using language in ways that are related to this rhetorical tradition. So what is rhetoric? Moving on page 9 here, language happens because human beings are desire machines, and what knits desire and language is rhetoric. Now, I don't think he means desire in kind of like a romantic or sexual sense at all. I think he's really speaking here about desire as like the ambitions that you have, the goals that you're striving to accomplish. And so language happens because human beings are striving to get things done. And what knits this ambition and language is rhetoric. That's really what I think he's saying there. And so related to the forum post, can you think of a moment? It could have been a scene in a TV show that you're watching in which someone just did a really amazing job of stopping everyone from doing something and creating a new opportunity for thinking through an issue or acting. Did you read a really interesting blog post related generally to a kind of like self-help kind of topic that just got you to stop for a second and think like, oh yeah, I can make that lifestyle change, and that would be really cool. That would potentially like change some of the ways in which I interact with people, or that would open up possibilities for career, or that would, whatever it could be. One of the things that you hear Leith talk about here is that there are a lot of fields and a lot of areas in U.S. culture that are rhetorical without the term. So if you're in marketing and advertising, if you are in other parts of business, if you're in government, if you're in politics, if you're if you or someone is a preacher or a rabbi or an imam, like they speak from the they speak to a congregation. All of those things are rhetorical. Whether it's the pastor or a salesman, they're doing it for different reasons. but they're using language in this rhetorical way. Even if the goals are completely different, they're not speaking or writing poetry. They're not speaking or writing from the standpoint of scientific description. They are moving people toward new connections with the world, new connections with each other, to act in new ways, to feel and think in new or different ways. That's rhetoric. And so this introductory chapter is really just kind of getting you to appreciate the extent to which rhetoric is kind of everywhere. Now we're focused for the most part on how it's done through language. So maybe that'll help you kind of limit your form response. Page 12 here, what seems to you rhetorical today is for the most part rhetoric that isn't working. Rhetoric has come to be understood as a byword for all that's insubstantial, untrustworthy, windy, and needlessly ornate. Yeah, this is actually an interesting point worth mentioning. I think oftentimes the term rhetoric still is used as a pejorative, meaning it's used to say that someone really sucks at communication. You know, oh, that's just rhetorical, it's merely rhetorical. That was so rhetorical. Like they're really just trying to say that what somebody was doing with language didn't work. It was bad. So thinking about, but I think what's interesting about that is I think what's interesting about that is the evaluation of whether rhetoric works for one person has to do with who they are as an audience. Because you know, one politician may be incredibly powerful and compelling to one group of people and seem like horrible to another. So, and that has everything to do with who that politician is speaking to rhetorically. You know, that politician has a specific audience or a subset of audiences that they're speaking to. That's whom they're focused on. And if you're outside of the scope of that rhetoric, then it's not going to sound very persuasive to you. So I think what I'm trying to say here that Leith doesn't say is that when you're looking at rhetoric, the first thing you're looking at is audience. Rhetoric is nothing if it's rhetoric is nothing but a way of persuasively communicating to a specific audience in a particular place and time. And so yeah, I'll say more about that in the next video. So knowledge, at the end of the chapter, Leith says, knowledge, it has been said, is power. And rhetoric is what gives words power. And I think that is actually a really useful way to think about rhetoric. You know, knowing stuff, having a unique perspective on the world, having an amazing idea that could change an industry. Having knowledge is great, but communicating that idea or that opportunity to people in a way that opens them to the possibility of it and moves them to acceptance or to the ability to say yes to it, that's rhetoric. So you can be the smartest person, you can have the best idea, but if you don't know how to market that thing right for a specific group of people, if you don't know how to advertise it well, if you don't know how to, you know, sell it for a particular group of people, and then know how to sell it differently for a different group of people, because one audience will have a certain ability to accept new ideas, and another audience will have a different set of abilities or disabilities to acceptance. You know, a good rhetorician is going to analyze an audience and understand what their possibilities are for change, and get the idea of knowledge to them in a way that's packaged appropriately for them. So getting back to, I hope this is helpful, just kind of reading through the introductory chapter. Again, where do you see rhetoric in your life today? It's everywhere. Especially after you read the introductory chapter, I think you'll appreciate it. It's just kind of all over the place. And so step back, think beyond just speeches and traditional print-based kinds of communication to the social media that you engage with and all different other kinds of media, and pick one recent example and really think about why it worked. And within a few weeks, the way in which you'll answer the question, why did it work, you'll have so much more, you'll have a lot more theory and conceptual understanding of what rhetoric is to be able to answer this question with a lot more depth. But initially, let's just start with what you can say based on what Leith offers you in that introductory chapter. So I'll stop there. I hope that's explanation enough to get the forum post done. I'll go into more detail into rhetoric theory when we get into, when I do the next video for you in the next day. I think by, tomorrow. I'll have a video up for you Thursday for this prompt and for the chapter on invention. Yeah, all right.